Great. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tidy Tea Time. Kiran, Samya, Pooja, welcome back. I feel
Hello.
like this, hi, this particular episode, I feel like we have arrived at this one too late or after too long, rather. Like, I feel like we've always missed the wood for the trees. We talk about so many things, different workplace trends, quiet quitting and great resignation and moonlighting and whatnot, but we've always like kind of talked about it but not talked about employee experience, don't you think?
Yeah, but maybe it's more than just a trend. We'll find out.
Yeah, no, it is I mean, and definitely not a new trend is the way I would see it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been hearing about employee experience, Kiran?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think a good 6, 7 years.
There you go. 6, 7 years. Soumya, you? So you've been in employee engagement, internal comms.
Yeah, I think the timeline matches for me as well. After I quit my job at the corporate where I was working in the internal communication and employee engagement team, I think is when I also started hearing a lot more about EX. Until then, it's
Okay.
always been engagement that I've been exposed to.
Yeah.
After that, we started hearing a lot more of EX. Yeah.
Pooja?
Me, not so much, but I've always been curious about how companies build their employee experience. What does that even mean? Because I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of people that are, you know, the usual complaints or not about it, but
Mm.
I've always been curious about what it truly holds. So I
Yeah.
think we can uncover that today.
Yeah. Well,
Interestingly,
yeah.
interestingly, one of my earliest titles on LinkedIn, I think way back in 2015, was employee experience enthusiast.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So it has been around clearly for a very, very long time. And, for me, for example, I've only ever heard of it since I started working at Tidy because I've never been in this HR space or, workplace experience or engagement space at all. So I've heard of employee engagement, definitely. I've heard of internal comms, I've heard of benefits, I've heard of all the other bits and pieces that make up the experience, but I had never heard of employee experience as a term till I joined Tidy. And even then, I feel like in my world, it's become a big deal over the last 3 years or so since the pandemic. Like before that, it might have been around, but it's really become like a big deal. Or has it really become a big deal? What do you guys think? Is it just us being in our echo chamber that we think it's a big deal?
I
Kiran?
think it is because there's so much of change in the workplace since the pandemic, right? Hybrid work, remote work. So the conversation naturally has started up again, and people are trying to redefine and reimagine what the new employee experience would look like. So I guess that's just what's happening now. But it's not a
Yeah.
new thing, like you said.
Yeah. Kiran, what about you? Do you think it's a big
Well,
deal? It's
is it
becoming
a
a
big?
big deal?
Um, I think it's a very convenient term
Oh,
in
okay.
most organizations. You just say, "Oh, we need to fix EX," but no one really knows what that even means.
Mm.
Um, so it can mean 10,000 different things to 10,000 different people, and unfortunately, that's because we're so early in its maturity cycle that I don't think people really know what to make of it as yet.
So I think brings me to my next question, right?
I know
What
I
is
teed you up pretty well for that.
okay then why don't you start with the answer since you know the question already?
What does employee experience entail?
Yeah, what is it? You said different people say different things and believe it's different things. So what is it to you?
I think the first thing that you have to understand is that the employee experience kind of came about as a term because people started hearing about consumer experience and customer experience, right? And through e-commerce, kind of the boom that happened, mid early 2000s to the 2010s, um, I think everyone started looking at how to convert people from an e-commerce perspective. That became the big thing. There were tons of different systems and applications that came in to try and build that journey or that experience of the consumer, make it as simple and frictionless as possible to make sure someone pays for a product. Um, and that's where the employee experience actually came from. Everyone's like, okay, how do I build an experience which is so similar to a consumer experience? Now, unfortunately, you can't kind of see it as apples to apples. It's very, very different sort of journeys that people are on when they're a consumer versus when they're an employee. And so I think that's where a lot of the initial sort of inertia has happened is employee experience is so complicated. You have so many different systems that run different processes. So if you think about onboarding, you think about HR. But unfortunately, and this is my favorite term, as all of you all know, is a phrase, it is not an HR problem, right?
Yeah.
Employee experience, similarly, is not an HR problem because when I come into work, it's not only HR that I'm interacting with that makes up my experience. I'm interacting with the systems that I use, my device, my software. I'm interacting with the table and the chair and the cafeteria, and I'm interacting with the transport service if there was one. So there's so many different parts to the employee experience. Um, I think people are starting to understand that it's not HR, but I think the problem is 90% still think employee experience is HR.
Hmm. Hmm. What are the, I mean, I keep wondering, EX can mean so many things, but, for example, I'll define it as, that experience that you have at every single interaction and touch point. I think you've covered that in a way, right? How do you ensure that this person, and it's more about a feeling thing for me. Yes, there are the physical attributes of the workplace, but it's also about how does it make the individual feel at the end of the day. That's what EX does, right? Because if you have a person who feels good about being here with you, who feels like they belong, who feels safe, who feels like they are valued, who feels that they have opportunity to grow, that person will automatically do a much better job of being the ideal employee, so to speak. So you need to provide that experience so they feel a certain way. I think that's what employee experience is to me. Soumya, Pooja, do you have anything differing views on that?
I think I'd rather have a combined view. I think EX is two things. One, making life and work easier for the employee. So that takes into account all of what Kiran said, right? How do I do my work easier? How does my life become easier with this work and the environment that I'm in? And I think the second would be how does my life and work become more fulfilling, maybe, right? Including my relationship with my manager, what does my growth in this company look like? So I think both of those aspects, those two words, I think easier and fulfilling is what EX comprises for me.
Yeah. In fact, we have a comment from Dinesh who says that I believe making things simple that helps users take the right decision. I think that is, connected to what you're saying as well. Keep it as simple as possible so the employee is naturally led along a path to doing the right, to be, to being able to grow in the best way possible, as well as be as productive as possible, deliver the right outcomes, be aligned to the company's mission, vision, goals, whatever it might be, right? I think that is a really good point. We have another comment as well from Rohan who says, um, isn't an important outcome of employee experience about creating ambassadors for the company? Thoughts on that? Creating brand ambassadors?
Isn't
Pooja?
that like a natural consequence of delivering great experience, right? If I feel like I'm being treated well and I'm getting what I want to, and I'm able to do my work also in the most productive way that I imagine myself to do it, I'm naturally going to be the one who is probably going to be that ambassador for the organization. If that's in terms of recommending the organization to others, being the one who is constantly talking about how great a place this is to work for. I think that employer branding bit comes as a natural consequence of a great employee experience.
Yeah, and I think it's a massive benefit actually, because in the long run there are so many There's it's like a domino effect. If you have somebody speaking well of your company, not only can you maybe get more business in, you can hire better talent. I mean, there's a research out there which says that talent that comes in through references usually will stick around longer. Therefore, your retention is better. You've dropped your attrition levels, and productivity is better because there's an automatic sense of camaraderie and community that is inbuilt into that system, right? So I think the benefits are immense of being able to create an experience so that your employees then go out and talk
I,
your
I would
company.
actually, I would actually, caution on that because that's
Mhm.
not the ROI or KPI for employee experience. If you go
Sure. What
down
is
that path,
the question? I'm
unfortunately,
glad you brought that up.
yeah, and I'll answer. I think unfortunately the problem is, and this is why they think it's an HR problem, is that
Mm.
shouldn't employees go out and give good reviews on Glassdoor is only one element of EX, right? Fundamentally, a good EX should make me enabled enough to do my job the fastest way possible. Something that Dinesh kind of talked about, I think, or put down in his comment. And in addition to that, also enables me to kind of grow at the pace that I want, right? Now, when all of that is happening, one of the outlets I will talk about is, when I go out on social media and say, oh man, this company is great because they are providing me with X, Y, and Z. But unfortunately, if you look at that X, Y, and Z and that just that review as your KPI or as your ROI, you will never approve a single employee experience project because that has very little ROI impact from a business perspective.
I
And
think
so I
there
think, again,
I differ, but I will come back to that later because there's other research that's been done on the impact of having employees talk you up, and how it impacts hiring and retention in general. But to what you said, right? EX has a problem right now, which is like you said, it's so hard to get budgets for EX projects. We've spoken to so many EX consultants and experts over the last few weeks, right? Especially because we've been running, we've started a new podcast. It's called Extra Extra. Do check it out on Spotify, where we speak to EX experts from around the world. And one of the, the common refrain is it is so hard to get budget allocation, to get leadership buy-in into EX initiatives. And Benita actually brought, she has commented as well, saying the same thing. How do you get businesses to care about EX? Right? So many of them don't even think that far ahead. They're still focused on leads and sales, immediate profits, right? How do you shift mindsets or even get EX more eyeballs, right? I think any comments on that?
I'll actually continue. I mean, if everyone allows me and humors me, is I think the problem fundamentally is exactly that. If you look at employee experience as an HR problem and you try and build a sort of project where the ROI that you go to a CEO and say is I'm going to get you better survey reviews and whatever on job boards or whatever it may be, right? No one is going to approve that.
Mm.
And I think that is unfortunately the core problem with projects that don't really get a good head start within the organization because you're not mapping EX to an actual business outcome. You know, going out and getting a good review is not a business outcome. Now, if I were to say, hey, if you have an individual coming into your organization and it takes them 8 days to start getting productive or 10 days to start getting productive, but with an EX project like this, I'm going to bring that down to 1 day. Suddenly, the CEO is like, I can get this guy billable on day one rather than on day eight. Fine, that employee might go out and actually put down a great review on whatever portal, but you will never get an approval if you go with that sort of feedback aspect as your KPI or as your ROI. You have to link it back to a business outcome. And let's be very candid, 99% of the companies are very capitalistic. Their point is to make money for themselves, for their investors, for their shareholders. So you have to tie anything that you want to do from an EX perspective to a business outcome. Otherwise, it's going to fail.
Fair enough. No, so that is about the hard facts, right? Completely about the hard facts. So you're saying basically, what I spoke about earlier. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is from the perspective of the business or the company itself. The second is from the perspective of the employee, right? You can look at EX from both sides. One is, what is EX going to give me as a company, and what is EX going to give me as an employee, right? And therefore, what will I give the company? There are two things, two aspects to it. And unfortunately or fortunately, whatever it might be, there's no judgment here, but it's about, numbers speak for themselves. But numbers do have a role to play even on the other side, right? To In order to, I feel like the way EX and the way it needs to be approached, like you said, it cannot be on the basis of a review where someone said, "Oh, I felt so good about working in this company." It has to be about data, right? The role of data is so very important over here, right? And do you find that enough companies have matured enough to understand that, Samya?
Before that, can I go back to Kiran's comment? I've been
Yeah.
waiting to share my point there, right? And I think one part where you said about business outcome, I agree, right? Organizations, your everyone apart from your HR probably wants to see the business outcome of your efforts. But that said, are all those good reviews that you can get from employees not aligned to your business? I think maybe not for a brand that already has like a big reputation and where people are willing to join, they already know about it. But for smaller organizations who are still establishing themselves, I think those reviews also matter. I have had people who have, and founders of companies who have spoken to me in terms of increasing the good reviews that they have. And I feel like that one need from the businesses side is what also has increased the attention towards EX even in smaller businesses, because that impacts some employees' decisions or some people's decision to join the company. I have had a friend of mine who uh, I think decided not to join a company because there was a particular review on Glassdoor that said this particular organization cut salaries during COVID. So there's that uncertainty that came with it. So maybe not for big businesses who already have an established name and reputation, but I definitely think for people who are not those businesses, they still care about these reviews. And if you go
I
back to
never
the
said no one cares about the reviews. Let's be very very clear about that. I just said that if you go to a CEO and tell him, I will give you 15% higher reviews, or I will give you 15% more revenues because of these EX projects, which one do you think he or she is going to choose?
So, but I think that's also a short term way of thinking, right?
It may
Because,
be, but it
yeah,
unfortunately is the reality.
yeah, but that's not going to stand companies in good stead in the long run at all, especially today, where employer brand is an important aspect. And we're talking about that, right? Like I spoke about some research that's come out where you're talking about reducing simple things like cost per hire, right? If you
Yep.
have a strong employer brand, your ability to reduce cost per hire goes down by, like, I mean, the cost goes down by
Significantly, yeah,
50%. Yeah,
100%. And if you don't have good people, you can't deliver a good service or a good product. I completely
exactly.
buy all that. But having had multiple conversations with leaders across multiple companies, it is unfortunately what will always get past the door is when you have a business ROI attached and not a engagement ROI attached.
Yeah. Pooja, why don't we, you tell me, in your, from your point of view, um,
Yeah.
would you change your mind about working with the company, or would you change your attitude towards a certain company? Say, even as a consumer for that matter, if you saw that they didn't treat their employees right, what would that do for you?
They didn't teach their employees right
Treat.
and then treat. Huh. So, I mean, as what were you going to say? Kiran, you were going to say something?
No, 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 go for it. Go for it.
Okay, no. As when Kiran was talking about the whole business aspect of things, the only thing that was running in my mind, and this is a very different perspective, is that yes, EX is a big business priority, but for me as a designer, um, it's so much to do with the people, the employees in the organization. Um, how EX isn't just a milestone, like you said, Debbie. It's those moments that matter, right? How does an employee feel? how does an employee, what are the employee's responsibilities, or what are their interactions like their work life balance. Like there's so much data that um, we can, both qualitative and quantitative data that can be collected, and building personas around these employees and understanding like their demographics, understanding their personal data, understanding their behaviors, all of these things play such a, like, having the employee at the center of that. And it isn't, I mean, technology is great, like it speeds up processes, it helps reduce time, like all of those things, but
Yeah.
I feel just on ground feedback collection, surveys, yeah, there's so many things that, and it isn't just, I mean, it may sound like an HR thing, but again, it's not. Like it has to be so other levels of the organization as well that are partaking, like a team of employee experience experts, so to speak,
Yeah.
that are running at these on ground, not just interviews with other employees, but with the managers, but with like senior leadership, like everyone. It takes a village to build a good employee experience. It's not one
Yeah.
person can like raise the bar so high
But
in
does
a
it
large
impact
organization.
your
So,
perspective on as a consumer? How does it
mm,
impact you? For example, there was a story that came out about McDonald's employees,
mm,
that had a very, really bad work environment in which to, do their day-to-day jobs. When
yeah.
you hear a story like that, what does it impact you? Will you say, "Oh God, I'm not going to go to order a McDonald's burger till they fix their EX"? Or they're just a bad employer, so therefore a bad brand? Does it go that far ever?
No. I mean, I would still, if I know that they have a bad culture, that I will still buy French fries
Hmm.
from them, but I might not speak highly of them. Like I would not. Uh,
But you're
it would
giving
just
them
be,
your money, so that's all that
I am,
matters.
yeah. I mean, it's a very double-edged sword situation. I don't know. I
Yeah.
wouldn't like, yeah, yeah. I would definitely point out the bad if it's really that um,
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Benita has another comment for us where she says that, she agrees with you, Kiran, and she says she's seen businesses not really work on EX even after they have solid data that shows them that retention rates are shabby. How then do you get them to care and see that it's proportional to companies' overall well-being? How do you get people to care about EX? That's a
The short answer is no one is going to in the short term, because as I said, most leaders have very very specific KPIs that they need to meet.
hmm.
Whether it is increasing revenue for the CEO, whether it is building higher sales pipelines for the sales officer, revenue officer, whatever it is. It's very business driven, right? When you have to go quarter on quarter, go and talk to your investors and say, hey, I had a great quarter, I had a shitty quarter, whatever it may be. I think the problem fundamentally is, as I said, is you really kind of have to speak their language.
Hmm.
It is only then will they care. And it is not, and maybe, I'm going to be torn apart for this, but maybe a lot of these leaders are not even thinking about people. They're saying
Hmm.
it because they have to, but how many of them are literally day in and day out, like really, thinking only about the people? I would fathom that it's very, 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 very few, because they have too many other things that they're thinking about on a daily basis. I need to get my revenues up. How am I going to do that? Whatever way possible, I'm going to do that, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think unless you speak their language, unfortunately, EX projects don't get a good sort of backing. Also, because the misconception is EX is an HR project, and very often we all know HR is often seen as an admin role, a cost center, multiple other things. So there's all of that baggage that comes when you start thinking about employee experience in projects and running EX. So which is why I said, if you can somehow twist the project to saying that You will reduce your infrastructure costs. You will reduce your time to get people productive, which will increase your revenues. Then suddenly someone will start sitting up and taking notice of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the baggage of HR comes with EX.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, there are more comments that are coming in, Nishant, and this is to what you were, what the question I posed to you, Pooja, was, about how it's a personal choice. Like, as consumers, no cricket fan stops watching Rohit or Virat Kohli because they have Baiju's in their t-shirts. I mean, that's, you separate the brand from the stories that you hear. That's fair. We do have another comment as well from Karn, who says, "What's the percentage of that split to the point you're making right now, Kiran? That is leaders who are doing lip service versus genuinely caring."
Yeah, I think I will pass that one.
That's not fair. You're not allowed to pass questions.
No, I don't know. I think I'll be very honest. I want to build a culture within Tidy, which is something that can grow, something that supports everyone from an organization perspective. I've said this in the past. We've had multiple conversations with TTT where we've kind of talked about even bringing women back into the workplace and all of that. But when you talk to a leader, the first thing they're going to stress about is revenue and money.
Mm,
Any leader, right? They're probably going to say people is one of their top three priorities. But I would actually put this out there and challenge anyone to find me a CEO who said people is their number one priority. It'll be in the top three,
mm,
but number one will always be revenue or something related to money.
that gives me a lot of, makes me want to pause for thought. Soumya, any thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I think I just have this example of where I worked at, right? EX, I was in the internal comms and employee engagement team, and we had a dual reporting. So we weren't reporting to HR alone. We were a part of the marketing team and also reporting to HR. And I have seen both of these leaders from the marketing team and the HR team kind of have those constant communication happening with the CEO. I've seen what projects, whatever have come out of those leaders have always been aligned to what the CEO wants. And I think it works that way, like Kiran said, someone who actually believes in the value of having these kind of initiatives on the business itself. Maybe not in the top one, maybe it will reach the top one sometime, but top three, even if your revenue has to come in, people are an important part of your revenue. If you have a team that's not motivated enough to kind of work and get you that revenue, you're failing there as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Great. On that note, we are out of time. There's so much that I want to say about employee experience, but I guess that we leave it for another day. Meanwhile, what I do want to say is that we've just released our EX guide. It's a 101 for anybody who's looking at building their EX strategy. So do take a look at it. It's on our LinkedIn. It's on our website. Check it out. Let us know if you think it's helpful. We've basically tried to make the whole process more of a scientific process, so that you have the data and you have information that can actually help you build a solid foundation on which you then start creating various experiences and journeys for your employees. Thank you so much to everyone who joined in today. Your comments were really, really, insightful, interesting. So thank you for that. And do join us again. This is something we do every couple of weeks. Do watch out on our LinkedIn page for the next topic. Until then, it's goodbye from all of us.
Okay, bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.